I'm Lily.
And I'm Jordan.
And we're the Drakes.
Welcome to Drake Academy. For our icebreaker today, we're going to reminisce a little bit on our favorite CEDH memories, and then we're going to do a big threat assessment discussion. We've got 5 topics that we're going to break down that can help you identify the threat at the table and navigate the political discussions that come around threat assessment. Finally, we're going to go through our viewers' questions and then kind of discuss the meta a little bit. Spoiler, it was weird this week.
Very weird.
So weird. So when I reminisce and I think back on our CEDH journey, and we've talked about it a couple of times in the first couple of videos of our channel, but the Boil being our first tournament, I actually don't remember it super well. I'll be completely honest.
That's crazy. I remember it pretty well, actually.
I have like no memory. I don't remember the games. Actually, that's not true. I remember exactly 2 things from the Boil. Mm-hmm. I remember when Josh gave me a Niv Mizzet after he cooked us.
Okay.
I still have that signed Niv Mizzet, actually. And I ran it in my Niv Mizzet list until I bought a like altered one, which was super cool. It's like an extended art altar. Mm-hmm. I need to find that card actually because I really want to put Niv Mizzet back together. I've been inspired. And then the second one, which I think is the funnier one, is I'm talking to our buddy TK, and he was still on Playing with Power, and someone shoved a playmat in my face because we're having like, a pretty close conversation here, and someone just, and TK is like, whoa, and I'm like, and dude's like, sign my playmat, and I'm like, okay, you TK, you go sign that playmat, I'm just gonna stand here awkwardly.
No hello, no how are you?
Sign my playmat.
You know what? Fair enough.
I was like,
straight to the point, bud.
Yeah, it was funny. For one, I didn't realize like TK was like kind of a,
Are you a minor celebrity?
Yeah. I was like, you're just my buddy I play games with. I didn't know what Playing with Power was. I was way too new for all that.
We were babies.
Yeah. So that was a funny experience. And I remember that because I was just like, should I be starstruck, TK? Can you sign my playmat? And the only thing we actually have signed from TK is the opposition agent.
The opposition agent, yeah. After that episode.
His super spicy hot take, which was Oppo is overrated, which is hilarious because now I think Oppo's like kind of out of the meta a little bit.
Yeah, like, I do think it is a little bit overrated nowadays.
Like some decks still definitely run it.
For sure. Your Esper shells,
Depends on the Esper shell nowadays, honestly.
Yeah, if you're control.
Like Blue Farm doesn't run Oppo anymore, right?
No, I don't think Blue Farm does.
And that was like kind of a staple early Blue Farm. But it was all different meta, right? Like trying to take people off their docksides was huge.
That's
so
true.
If you could snipe a dockside by Oppoing them and then taking their dockside and then winning, like kind of had a more utility, I think, then. Because what are you sniping now?
I mean,
Breach?
I think there's a good argument for it with all the green tutors that exist out there.
Yeah, but
your Nature's Rhythms, your Green Sun Zeniths, if you want to tempo out green, you say, hey, you can't tutor.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you're playing a deck like Rogthras, right, where they're just, okay, well, I can't tutor, I'm just going to start drawing 1,000 cards, right? And then you're still in the same spot.
But oftentimes their out is, I'm going to tap this Cradle until I find the green tutor that gets me the creature that wins the game. Typically the Aboro, right? So if you can...
Sure.
If you can stop that.
Maybe.
I mean, it's ultimately semantics. If you're to the point where they're doing that, you're probably losing anyway, but...
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's kind of why most Blue Farm decks have gotten off it, because it's better just to go fast.
It's better just to win.
Yeah. What about you? What is like some memories that stick out for you?
I don't even know if I classify this in the good or the bad category, but sitting on the plane to Boston with you, Nick, and I.
It's a good time. It's a good time to talk about this, considering how many of our friends are stuck trying to get back from a Rumble.
I don't think Preston's back in North Carolina. I think Preston's still in Orlando. But yeah, sitting on that plane with Nick, yapping through every delay. I don't think the 3 of us collectively shut up for more than 10 minutes.
Shocker, CEDH. People don't shut up. There's also nothing to do. We were stuck on that plane for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
I didn't even think we were going to make it on time. We got in at like 3 a.m.
And then every time the captain or a flight attendant would come over the intercom system and announce another delay, we would just laugh and keep yapping. Like, it was to the point where if we don't laugh, we crash out, And there was the point where they said, hey, we may not get out of here. If you want to get off the plane now, go find another flight, stay in Charlotte, whatever.
I should have gotten off that plane. Hindsight. I wouldn't have scrubbed out or gotten sick or scrubbed out again.
Could have avoided influenza A, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just laughing in the collective camaraderie of the situation where we just had no choice but to sit on that plane and roll with whatever was coming was hilarious to me.
That tournament, I don't remember what it was, but when we were driving back from whatever tournament and TKU and Chris were brewing up Jeskai Pirates.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember what tournament that was.
Me either.
But that was...
Atlanta? I want to say Atlanta.
It was definitely an Atlanta event.
We've been to Atlanta enough at this point.
I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know which Atlanta event.
CCS.
Something or another.
Question mark.
Yeah, I think that event, that was really cool. That was fun to like listen to, and that's what inspired the original channel.
Yeah.
Was that brewing session.
Yeah.
And then, man, what other events really stick out for me? Like when I think back on a lot of stuff, I'll say like the biggest ones. Mostly it's just like, man, it sticks out for a bad reason, but Chili's was super fun. Right before Raven and Spooky got their cards stolen.
Oh, I was at home for that
You
one.
were. But that was like one of the funnest dinners.
That makes me so sad.
We had such a great time, and it was so marred by that moment afterwards. Like, oof.
I remember I was studying for the bar, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember I'm locked into my laptop all day, right? This is the weekend before the bar exam. And I get a call from Jordan at like 7 or 8 p.m. And I hadn't heard much from him because he's traveling, to what have you. This isn't weird, right? And he calls me and says, yeah, their car got broken into. Yeah, we're dealing with the police right now. The cops? What is going on?
Yeah, I felt so bad for them. This is why I always bring my back in everywhere I go. I'm too paranoid for this.
You were paranoid before that.
Well,
let's be real.
For some context, I also spent a lot of time in California, and anyone who lives out there knows car break-ins are rampant everywhere. Sometimes you just leave your car unlocked because it's better than them breaking your window. They're gonna rifle through your car. It's just, do you want to pay for a broken window, or do you just want them to let them rifle because you got nothing anyway? So, unless they steal your car, that's
That's a different issue.
But my cars always suck too much. They weren't worth stealing.
Nice.
It's like, hey, you might get to Mexico, but probably not. Not on this car. Sorry, buddy.
It's crazy.
No chop shop for you.
It's crazy work.
It's true, though.
I felt really bad for the homies, but the community really came together. There was the GoFundMe. A lot of people retweeted it. A lot of people donated. I think Raven had a decent amount of real cards 2 weeks after all of his stuff got stolen, which was nice.
And then we're able to... They had decks to run the next day still for their top 16.
Top 16 game, yeah.
And Raven won the whole thing, which was awesome. Like, kind of a good... Not a good ending, but like a...
The universe giveth, the universe taketh away type moment, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
Karmic balance, if you believe in all that.
Any others that stick out?
Salt Fest in Florida, I think.
That was a lot of fun. The IHOP?
Yeah, the IHOP games until 3 or 4 in the morning, right? Just trying out different decks. The first time I felt the power of Talion. And was that a post-Dockside meta yet?
No.
Interesting. That makes sense.
That's
that
pretty
actually
Dockside.
makes sense. Yeah. So, Demir shenanigans. I lost red for a night. I still had fun.
Yeah.
We also scrubbed at that tournament, but a lot of fun memories from it.
Yeah. It was a bad tournament for me. It started off so well, too. I won a game, and then I was like, I'm riding high.
Game. Yeah.
And then I think I won a second game, and I was like on top of the world. And then, I was just like...
Loss.
And I lost in like heartbreaking ways, too. It's like I was winning with a game where it was like I had the Basalt on the stack, I had Friends of Gadgeteer, about to start making infinite colorless mana.
Those were still your Marnius days.
It was still Marnius. And I thought I was winning because like nobody could have had a counterspell by then because so much interaction had been used on the Karksaka player, our buddy Nick.
Yeah.
And a Mind Break trap from out of nowhere on a dude who hadn't drawn cards. And I was like, brother, how do you still have a counter?
Mind break trap from the top rope.
I think about that game so much.
Yeah.
Because that was basically like a win it in for me.
Yeah.
And I lost because of that. And I think about that because I'm like, would today's Jordan make that mistake? No. I'd have passed priority so damn hard. Because, some context, there was a Mind's Desire on the stack, and I just immediately mind break trapped it. Didn't think about it. I was like, oh yeah, I mind break trap.
Yeah.
Had I talked the table, did some little table talking.
Some mind warming.
No.
Jordan Drake mind worm, guys.
No. Not mind warming. Just talk. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation. just a little chit chat.
The conversation slanted towards Jordan's will.
And had I known he had the mind break trap, I could have been like, oh, I pass. Oh.
Sure. We don't advocate for any of what's being talked about here.
Why not? The little table talk doesn't hurt anybody.
No, my favorite Jordan.
Just a little treat, a little treat for the table.
My favorite Jordan question. You guys don't have anything for that? You didn't hit the table with that, and that's why you lost.
We're having a discussion, okay? You can respond by saying, I don't have anything.
Well, he's sitting on Force of Neg, Mind Break Trap, a sword.
This does not happen.
Do you guys have anything for that?
This does not happen.
The answer should always be no.
That's a lie, then. You're just going to lie to me? You're advocating for people to lie to my face?
Yes.
Right.
Lie to Jordan 2026.
Wild. That is a wild way to... Okay. Why have enemies when you can just be married?
Oh, this is probably getting cut.
It's not. I promise it's not.
Sick.
All right. So for the topic that we really wanted to discuss today, when we were debating what are like common things that people struggle with, threat assessment is a very, very common one. It comes up all the time. How do I threat assess? How do I know who's the threat? How do I not, when the game is so dynamic and it changes so much that we see it a lot where it's like people... they'll threat assess correctly at the beginning, but then as it changes really quickly, and CEDH is very fluid, right? It's always a very fluid situation. And so when it's changing like that, I think people struggle to keep up with it. They get either tunnel visioned into the first person is still the threat, and they're always going to be the threat. Or a deck is the threat, and they're always going to be the threat no matter what they do. We saw this a lot with Kinnan. Kinnan especially gets... really taken down hard in a lot of pods because people are really afraid of it snowballing. And sometimes you overcommit to killing Kinnan, which, I'm always a proponent of.
I was going to say, I'm not hearing any issues here.
But like sometimes you overcommit to killing Kinnan and then you get blown out by somebody else right after you've dismantled the board, right?
Right.
Or in other cases, you took apart a board and then immediately lost to somebody else, right? Like let's say, I dismantled the Kinnan and then I lose immediately to Sisay, or vice versa, right? I dismantled the Sisay and immediately lost the Kinnan. Well, then how did I know who to threat assess correctly? Should I have dismantled anybody? There's discussions that happen. Because Magic is such a game of resource allocation, you're so limited on what you can do that all your game actions have to be really tight. Because I think if it's not, you're just going to put yourself in these really bad situations where you lose agency in the game.
That's fair. I do think out of all of the topics, threat assessment is probably one of the ones that you can master more quickly. Because when we talk about mulligans, right, and we talk about politicking, especially for something like politicking, there's probably always something you could have said differently. Maybe you could have approached a different person or a different table differently. And those are just things that you slowly pick up as you get more tournament reps. Yeah. Same with mulligans, right? We still get hands where it's, man, this hand is suspicious. This hand could be good. Oh, I think I'm going to bank on it. Oh, that was a mistake, right? Mulligans are also very dynamic, but threat assessment, I think, is something, if you really take the time to think about it and to understand the play patterns, it is something you can actually master, right? Where it's a very obtainable goal and something that you can continuously work on. And I think it leaves less up for doubt than something like mulligans, right? It's a more...
I don't know. I think politics is a little bit more abstract. Like,
it is.
I think mulligans, you'll know pretty quickly if you mulligan correctly.
Yeah.
And you'll learn, I think as you play your deck more, you'll learn to identify correct mulligans. I think politics is always the tough one because it's always hard to say, like, I could have done this or should have done this differently. Because you also don't know how people are going to react to what you're bringing up.
Right.
Right? Like, you can say, oh, I should have made a deal with this person, but what if that person wouldn't have made a deal no matter what?
Yeah.
Like, unless you you just don't know. It's too dynamic. So I think from that perspective, when I'm like, how do I fix my games? I think starting with threat assessment and mulligans, right? It's like, I'd probably do like 1A, 1B, right? Understanding, and then 1C is like, am I pushing into the wrong board states? Yeah. But I think like when you start at threat assessment also makes you a better politicker.
It does.
Yeah. And we'll get into that as we start. So I'll go ahead and start us off with our kind of number one way you start by threat assessing. So the first thing when you're assessing a deck and you're assessing the threat it brings, before you ever even draw your first card, when you're doing your mulligans, you really want to understand the relative value of a card to a deck. A great example of this is Derevi. Derevi in some decks is a great value piece. In other decks, it's a finisher. In some decks, it's a very fast finisher, right? If you have a Nagila deck at the table, they can win very quickly with Derevi. If you have a TNT at the table, well, Derevi's good, but unless they already have the cradle set up or there's, some other pieces they need, it's still a really good card, but it's maybe not quite as scary right off the bat. And then, in its own deck, it's good and it's not something you can really get rid of very easily, but it's also not something you have to like ferociously like kill it on sight like you would in, say, a Nagila deck. So that's a great example. Smothering Tithe is another good one. In some decks, it's a very, very powerful engine. In other decks, it is a backbreaking, you will lose the game very quickly card. For example, if you're playing it against, let's say, a Marnius or a Sisay, it's backbreaking. If they get this card, they will win very fast, very, very quickly. In a deck like Blue Farm, they probably will win relatively quickly, but there's time sometimes, right? And this is where the relative value comes in. Good cards are still very good cards, but there is a level to them that other decks can access that maybe, certain decks can't. Like I think Rhystic Study is extraordinarily dangerous in a deck like Kinnan, maybe a little less so in a deck like TNT, because TNT has a little bit trouble converting the mana quickly, right? They're converting the cards quickly in, because of its mana resources. It needs dorks and lands set up correctly because they're not on a lot of rocks. Whereas a deck like Kinnan, because it makes so much mana so quickly, or a deck like Rogthras, for example, they can convert that very quickly to wins. Same thing with Blue Farm because of all the rituals and the Breach being such an efficient win package. So I think when I sit down, first and foremost, I want to think through, I know what this deck does and I know what it looks like. And some of this comes from experience, but a lot of times if I just know what the deck is and doing, then I know what cards are their scary cards, right? I know Rhystic Study is extraordinarily scary in Kinnan. Obviously, Consphinx and Hullbreaker Horror and some of these others are also scary. Yeah. But when we're talking about how do I open up a game and threat assess correctly who the opening threat is, I mean, unless Kinnan just has, a god start, right? They're not going to drop a Consphinx turn 2. It does happen, but like hopefully, right? You're not in that situation. But more commonly, them dropping a Rhystic Study or a copy enchantment and copying your Rhystic Study. These are all things that when you sit down and you're deciding who's the threat at the table, those are things that I would take into account at first, because then they let me understand when I'm threat assessing on turn 2, 3, and 4, based on the cards that I know are of high value to them, now I can start assessing from that spot. If I go into a deck and I'm blind to that deck, sometimes you just start to threat assess generically powerful cards. So like, for example, I played a weird Jund deck a couple weeks ago. So I started just trying to figure out, okay, when I'm threat assessing, I want to look at what they're weird, or I'm looking at, what are the good Jund cards, and then I'm reading the commander, trying to figure out, based on what the commander's text says, what are going to be their powerful cards. Very quickly, it became apparent it was an anti-Ul deck. So it's a new deck. It's very fast. It's like blindingly fast.
That's hilarious.
And Devoted Druid was his like scary card, which I did not realize at first. It took a turn cycle of watching him do like a loop with it almost, where I realized, oh crap, like this is the scary card in the deck. It's not some generic Jund engine. Yeah. It's Devoted Druid, which is, also scary in my deck, for similar reasons, because we can access a very quick win with it. And so I think when I'm like threat assessing, understanding that, right? A Rhystic Study is a very good card, but how do I threat assess when there are 3 Rhystic Studies? Somebody is still ahead in the resource game. At that point, it becomes up to you to understand which decks are going to be more able to quickly convert that Rhystic Study to win. And once you understand that, then you can start to threat assess more correctly on, okay, I'm going to threat assess that Kinnan's going to go first because they're going to draw more cards and they can convert that quicker. TNT, maybe a little slower. And then, I don't know, Sisse, them drawing cards is almost to their detriment sometimes, right? Like, you know, or, you know, it really depends on the deck. But like Wheels, another great example. A wheel in like a blue farm is like, okay, like that sucks, but I'm not too worried about it. A wheel in Roxai or Ral, I'm terrified, legitimately terrified. Like I'm like, oh shit, we probably should counter that, you know? A ritual spell in blue farm may be scary. It's kind of context dependent. Like if they cast a dark ritual, you're like, okay, we can have a discussion. Like as long as it's not Necro or Naz, it's probably fine. If they cast a ritual spell in a Tali, I'm terrified. You're right.
Yeah.
So when we talk about contextual value, that's kind of what we mean is understanding how the deck wants to use that spell and why it might be more valuable to that deck versus other decks.
Yeah. A good example that comes to mind, I was going to talk about Wheels. It's funny that you brought that up. Another
Same
one.
brain cell.
Same brain cell. We're sharing the brain cell right now. Another one that I think of is the One Ring, right? So when you talk about Derevi One Ring is backbreaking, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I have rarely seen a Derevi resolve a One Ring and they don't just win the game, right? They start tapping on tapping.
Or very quickly, right?
Yeah, they draw a billion cards, you're pretty cooked, right? But then I think of the Envy game where you had a turn one ring.
Really? We're going to bring up my failure?
Not your failure, right?
It feels like a failure.
The One Ring promptly got cut from D&D, so
It did. I was so frustrated. Oh my god, I was so mad about that game.
Right, but you had turn One Ring, which is the dream of all One Ring players, you know? And so when we're talking about this context, right? Derevi One Ring, backbreaking. Turn One Ring in TNT.
You lose.
you certainly don't win.
I should have won. It should have led to a win, okay? Like, God, dude. Talk about a game. We talking about best memories, worst memory right there.
No.
That's going to haunt me forever.
No, we're backtracking now.
Sorry.
That was the intro.
I'm having war flashbacks. You know, I'm just like hard.
Just a battlefield in front of Jordan's eyes. It's him casting the force of will.
What's that soldier meme where it's like he's got the wide eyes?
Yeah. That's you right now. You think about casting that force of will at night. And
I have thought about it. There's been a couple days where it like comes back into my mind and I'm like, oh, there it is again. Thank you, intrusive thoughts. I appreciate it.
There's the bad thoughts.
Force of will. But I think that's a great example.
Right? It's a very context-specific card where in your deck you couldn't capitalize on it quick enough before the blue farm player outpaced you.
Yeah.
In Derevi, it's a backbreaking card. Same with Wheels, right? And I had to learn this the hard way in Ral. I let one too many Wheels resolve and promptly got cooked before I realized counter the wheel.
Counter the wheel.
Because even in Rogsai, right? If they tap out for the wheel, you don't necessarily have to counter the wheel. It
depends.
It's a 50-50 calculus for Rogsai. Now, if there's mana up, if they're established, the calculus gets different.
You can get away with it more.
You can.
Sometimes.
You can.
It is dependent. You can never get away with it.
You can never get away with it in Ral. No. And so that's kind of what we mean when we're talking about these context-specific discussions. Rituals are also a good point, right? Dark Writ in certain decks, really terrifying, you know? The blue farm deck is probably about 50-50. Maybe they'll cast Timna. Maybe they'll cast a generic value engine. In Rogsai, if I see a Dark Writ, I'm assuming they're casting Necro after. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I see a Dark Writ in Rogsai, I just assume we're losing or somebody needs to have the mental misstep. So it's kind of, once again, like we've said on this channel before, really having an in-depth knowledge of the decks that you're playing against. And like Jordan said before, he played against a Jund pile, right? And in those cases, it's just kind of knowing generically what's good in that color pie and what you need to look out for. Maybe you'll see an Underworld Breach, for example, or sometimes Bolus Citadel lines still crop up. It's about knowing... Protean Hulk, Food Chain, right? It's about knowing the bombs that can come out of the deck and how to combat them and where the outlets are, right? Is the outlet in the command zone? Do they need to find the outlet for the win? Yeah. Are they just going to resolve Thoracle Consult on you and, GG's, right? It's about kind of knowing what that deck seeks to do and what cards get them there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the second thing we're going to talk about when it comes to threat assessment is decks and their relative opening hands and their beginning starts, right? Because different decks and different strategies have different periods during the game where they find their footing. So turbo decks are most comfortable in turn 1 and turn 2.
Right.
And after that, it becomes a lot more difficult for them to stabilize because typically the table has stopped their early play, their early power play, like a Necro, a Nas, a Wheel, what have you. And, you know, if they haven't, it's likely that you've lost at that point. Whereas mid-range decks stabilize into turns 3 and 4, and turns 1 or 2 are kind of shaky, whereas that's where turbo decks thrive.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting at a table, how do you address a turbo deck dumping its hand versus a mid-range deck dumping its hand, or a Rogsai keeping first 7 and a TNT keeping first 7, right? It's a different calculus that kind of goes into each one. So generally when we see a mid-range deck dump its hand, depending on what it is, right, it'll probably take the form of dorks or mana rocks into some type of advantage engine, maybe an early Rhystic Study, an early Smothering Tithe, and that's how they're going to stabilize into the mid game. Yep. They're going to have that mana advantage or that card advantage. And in the long run of the game, right, it is likely that that advantage engine is going to lose you the game as we go into 3 and 4. However, right at that moment on turn 1 and turn 2, when they're dumping their hand, it isn't going to lose you the game immediately. They're looking for the long run, right? Whereas if we see a deck like Itali or Ral dump its hand, dump a bunch of mana rocks, we know an explosive play is probably coming on turn 2. If that's their turn 1 is a whole bunch of mana, turn 2 they're likely going to push something, whether it's, you know, their wheel, their commander to start flipping, a Necropotence, something like that, right? So when we see turbo decks dumping their hand, when you're assessing the board, when you're sitting down at the table, you need to be saying that's a threat. Whereas if the TNT, the Marnius, the Derevi, the kind of slower off the block decks dump their hand, yeah, it's a problem. And you may get outvalued into turn 4, right? But right at that moment, the turbo deck looks a lot scarier on board. And it's also context dependent, right? Did they snap keep that first 7? Did they go to 4 and now they have no cards in hand? Well, and at that case, right, if they're hellbent, it may not be an issue. So it kind of all depends on what happened in the game so far and those early plays that they make.
Yeah, and it's tough. I think because threat assessment should be happening at every stage of the game. And I think people forget about this because they're like, I'll just make my plays and I've got time before I need to start assessing. But like, when I sit down and I imagine other, players that are other players that are constantly, in those top 16, top 4s, when we all sit down, I'm immediately threat assessing, like from the rip. I'm like, okay, Raoul's a threat. So say a threat at around this point. Blue Farm's a threat at literally every stage of the game for me. It is, right?
No.
Blue Farm and Kitten are the two decks that I think are a threat at literally every stage of the game because
interesting.
Because both of them can turbo out a win against you very quickly if they want to, or they can pivot to kind of the more grindier plan. So what I'm looking for them when they set up is, how are they setting up? Because sometimes you can kind of get some clues based on how they're setting up to which way they're going. If I'm noticing Blue Farm's kind of holding back a little bit, maybe they're not jumping a Rhystic Study turn 2, then they might be like trying to slam something like turn 3, even faster maybe, right? For Kinnan, it's really hard to tell because you never know if they just have the Natty Basalt. Like you just never know if it's like, oh, here's my Transmute Artifact, and you're like, great, thanks, buddy. So like outside of those two decks though, I agree, right? It's really tough because you always have to keep context in everything. If a Rogthras drops, a turn 1, rock, Rog, Squirrels, I've got 3 Squirrels, Cradle. It's like, oh shit, what just happened? Right? All of a sudden, they've got a ton of mana. But if there's an Atali that also dropped, enough mana to where it's like a feasible turn 2 Troger, we still have to threat assess that the Atali is still the more dangerous threat right now over the Rogthras. They're both scary, but there's always somebody ahead. No one's ever even if it's like 1A, 1B, right? And Rogthras is like right here. When you're threat assessing, a lot of times it comes down to, okay, well, if I think they're both a threat, then I can get the Rogthras to fight more than I can because now I'm going to save my resources because they can go to war with each other, and I get to kind of play my game a little bit more, right? Let the two threats deal with each other.
Right.
Sometimes that's viable, but sometimes if players are greedy and they kept the dump hand, and you're left holding the bag at that point, right? You're left with the counter spell being like, okay. And, that's, honestly, those are games where draws happen.
No, that's where you say we're drawing this game.
But that's why draws happen, because of situations like that where someone did the greedy play into a turbo deck that also, does what a turbo deck has to do.
Yep.
And the player with the one counter spell gets to dictate the terms now. And I think that's why sometimes making those greedy plays, can be a mistake, because now you've lost agency in the game by doing so.
Yeah.
If you held back just a little bit maybe and done that, a couple turns in, giving yourself a little bit more wiggle room and setup and let the other players develop just a little bit, that can be kind of an interesting play. And I do it sometimes with TNT where I'm not super quick to like slam out a lot of value unless I'm playing another like high value deck. So like if I'm playing against a Cannon or a Rockdass, sometimes I'll try to match them, but sometimes I'll be a hair behind, because if I'm a hair behind, I'm not the threat. Right? That's how you become not the threat, is say like, yeah, I'm scary, but look at him. He's way terrifying. Way more terrifying.
Back to the deflecting Jordan does.
If you honestly want to know like why it works, that's how it works. Is if you're always a hair behind everybody else, then you can't possibly be the threat.
Yeah.
Right? If everyone correctly threat assesses that the Rockdass player has more mana than you and access to card draw, and yeah, you have access to card draw too, but maybe your card draw is like slightly worse, or you have slightly less mana, then you're not the threat. Like you are a threat, but you're not the threat. And I think that's a huge thing that people have to remember. Every deck at the table is a threat.
Right.
At all times. All four decks, I mean, unless you're playing like someone accidentally brought a precon to a tournament, right? I mean, even sometimes precons can be scary.
Yeah.
But like, unless they just, have no idea what's going on, they mold to one, they're not, this game is long over before they're doing anything. Generally, every deck at the table can win on a dime on you. That's like, if it's a properly built CEDH deck, you just never know. Right?
That's true.
I think when I'm threat assessing, and I feel like I'm in a great threat assessment like mindset, and I've got a good grasp on what's happening on the table, because there are some games where I screw up, right? And my threat assessment is off. Right? I thought this person was a threat and this person wasn't. And there's various factors to why, right? Either I misinterpreted the way their deck was constructed, or I believed like they were a little slower than they actually were, or they just drew the nuts, and you just, sometimes it happens, right? The variable game format. But like, I think about like that a lot, right? And it's like, when I feel like I'm in a good space of my threat assessment is on point, that's where I usually like to land with my own personal deck. Is I'm going to be a hair behind, because when you're threat assessing correctly, it's the turbo deck first, then the deck that's dumping all their stuff, and then everybody else, right?
That's fair.
I mean, my top 16 game is a great example of that. One of the reasons I lost is because the table ganged up on me. Why did it gang up on me? Turn one wondering, right? And it's truly fair. One blue farm went down to like 3. Yeah. The other blue farm went down to like 5 or 6. And like, he had a decent hand, but I think he did. I don't remember if he tried to do something early and it got stopped, but like he didn't do much until the win attempt, right? I think the Smothering Tythos is like big play.
That's fair.
And then, he tried to Bowmaster me too. And I killed his Bowmaster. And then Sisei got Bowmastered. I think his Bloom Tender got Bowmastered. And so he was just like, I'm now way behind.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like sitting there with massive value. So like the table ganged up on me for a second, and then the Bowmaster killed the Bloom Tender. And now I'm still the threat because I'm so far ahead of everybody that it becomes a 3v1.
Yep.
Now everyone's using all the resources killing my stuff. I'm having to use my counter magic to defend my stuff. And then Sterling is able to win because I'm out of counter magic because I used it to defend my stuff.
Yeah.
And this is how you get into those spots where either you have to be able to quickly convert your resources to a win if you're going to be in a position where I dump my hand. That's why Rockdass is so good and Kinnan is so good, because either they convert so quickly, or in Kinnan's case, I just keep cloning Ristic Study. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you kill. I'm just going to draw 8 cards anyway every time you do something.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
Yeah. That was always my problem on Malcolm Vile. A lot of the time I would develop an early Malcolm and people would see that and people would get spooked.
Well, you're the turbo. You're the turbo threat.
Turbo.
It's correct, but it's objectively correct. Because every time, no, you can't say
turbo.
Okay, every time Lily would demonic tutor and a Malcolm was on the board, it was always for Glinthorn. Every single time.
Not every single time.
Yes, every single time.
Not every single time.
Every single time. I died to that stupid the Minotaur so many times, and then she'd get super butthurt when she'd be like, "Oh, you kept interaction for me." Yes, I kept interaction. Why are we even having a discussion about this? Yes, I kept interaction for the stupid Minotaur that beat me 3 times in a row because every time we were like, "Lily, don't do it, don't do it," and she'll be like, "Okay, I won't. Maybe I will. I guess we'll see what I demonic tutor for." We're like, "Okay."
I'm not committing to anything.
It's always Glenhorn. It was always Glenhorn.
No, sometimes I'd have it in my hand.
You see what I have to deal with.
No, but it did get frustrating in that deck where I would have the early Malcolm and no follow-up, and then Malcolm would just get nuked to the stratosphere, right? And then a Kinnan drops Basalt right afterwards, right? And it's like, hey guys, if I'm telling you we don't have the Glinthorn and there's also a Kinnan with the Transmute artifact, can we maybe not, please? You know? And so that's where you have to assess the relative threats on the board, right? If I'm telling you that I don't have the Glinthorn, right? If I'm willing to have that conversation, and sometimes people aren't willing to have that conversation. Sometimes maybe the nuts are in their hand and they're not willing to politic about it, and that's fine. But if somebody's offering you the information that they don't have the win, I think it's okay to hold on to the interaction and see what they do. I think in the instance that I'm referencing, it was a red blast, right? So if I did lie to you, or if I did top deck the Glinthorn, you can still red blast the Malcolm with the Glinthorn on the stack. But since I didn't push the win, I passed the turn, didn't have Glinthorn, wasn't pushing Glinthorn, lost my Malcolm, then we immediately lost to Kinnan, right? And if that player had just held that red blast back, right, waited to see how I developed, waited to see how the Kinnan developed, we could have kept playing the game, you know?
I agree.
So that early, my beginning of dumping Malcolm looked scary, but it wasn't necessarily the threat at that moment. And that's where threat assessment gets tricky, right? Because with Malcolm decks and with Kinnan decks, you don't know when I'm going to drop the Glinthorn. You don't know if I top decked it and if I'm going to push right there. Right. On the other hand, you don't know if Kinnan top decked the Basalt or the way to get Basalt.
Or if they're going to flip into something scary.
Exactly. Yeah. Or they just have the Mirage Mirror in hand because they always have the Mirage Mirror in hand. You know, like it's those context-specific decisions that can really make or break games that you may not have the answer to in the moment either, right? We're talking about all of these with perfect information and perfect hindsight.
Yeah. But the idea is that because we've experienced these, hopefully, when you threat assess, you'll be able to take some of our mistakes and apply them to your games.
Learn from our mistakes, please.
The third way you can assess board states is by force multipliers. So this is an old military term. I have a background in the Marines. I was with 1st Battalion, 1st Marines out of Camp Pendleton. And this is a term that you hear quite often. So what a force multiplier is basically when a bunch of components come together and make the whole stronger. So in military example, we use a lot of like combined arms. So if you have your infantry supported by your tanks and your air force, that would be, you know, force multipliers. Everything is making the force stronger. So how this applies to CEDH is there are cards that basically make the entirety of the board scarier by their existence. And so what I mean by this is a great example, Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe is a scary card. Great card. When it's on the board, a lot of good things can happen. A force multiplier for Smothering Tithe, though, is Kinnan, because it now takes those treasures and basically gives you 2 treasures for every card that's drawn. Mm-hmm. Really scary and really nutty. So cards like that would be considered force multipliers. Another great example, using Kinnan again, is if you have a Kinnan and a couple creatures that don't tap for mana and you play an Enduring Vitality, well, now you've made a ton of mana. The Enduring Vitality in this case is your force multiplier. Mm-hmm. For TNT, we have our reducers. Those are our force multipliers. They turn Cradle and Thrasios into a significant threat, whereas otherwise, it's scary. It's good. Cradle and Thrasios is great to have, right? Like, I'm not saying it's not. But force multipliers are what actually makes boards go from, like, that's really good to, oh, shit, I should probably like have a solution now to start dealing with this problem. Mm-hmm. And so when you see force multipliers hit the board, that is also a way for you to key in on who is the threat, right? Mm-hmm. If they have a couple of generic value engines, and that's cool, right? But when they start to stack things that make those engines better, you know, like I said, if I'm on Thrasios and 3 creatures and Cradle, that's good, right? Mm-hmm. It's very good. but it's not a huge threat yet because like that's a terrible conversion. It's 4 mana for a single card. You wouldn't run that in your deck, right? You wouldn't run a spell that's 4 mana, draw 1 card. Or Thrasia's ability, right? Scry 1, whatever, right? You wouldn't do it. It's terrible. It's a terrible conversion rate. But when you have the reducers, especially 2 of them, all of a sudden 1 to scry 1 and look at it and put it on the bottom and draw a card, like all of a sudden pretty good, right? Like pretty good. So that's where that comes into play, is understanding when you're looking at threat assessment, you're understanding board states. How many force multipliers do people have in play, right? How big are they getting? How scary they're getting? Is it a single? Because for some decks, a single value engine is good enough, right? Blue farm, it's Ristic Study. They don't need a force multiplier beyond that. It's Ristic Study.
That's debatable.
I mean, it's really not, right? Like it's a Ristic Study.
That's debatable.
It's Ristic Study. There's what else?
It's Ristic Study and mana.
Yeah, whatever. Right?
Ristic Study and Smothering Dive.
Now you're just being greedy. That's way too greedy. Whereas decks like Rockdress, they need more, right? They need more of a setup. Decks like TNT need more of a setup. Decks like Sisay need setups. All those are helping get the engine online and turn it from a we're doing the thing to we're really doing the thing. And you should be terrified of what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of what I found in Pirate Farm, because that was kind of the whole basis behind that list when I was running it, is really heavy Malcolm-centric synergies, right? So it was Malcolm, Professional Facebreaker, Lightning Rig Crew, 1-drop pirate, and suddenly we're off to the races. Yeah. And suddenly you're asking how I have 30 treasures, right?
Yeah.
And then, you can dismantle Malcolm. Okay, I'll do something else with that. We'll move on from the Malcolm plan. We'll flip that. We'll put them into Professional Facebreaker, right? We'll jam an Adnaz. Why not? And so I found myself kind of hitting those force multipliers in that list a lot. You're right. Lists like Blue Farm, Ristic Study is mostly all you need, although, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, mana is kind of the tipping point for farm a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Especially if you rely on rituals more and you're on a more turbo, quote unquote, slanted version, and the mana doesn't last. All the card draw in the world doesn't help you if you're just drawing value engines and no gas, or gas and no way to cast the gas, right? So I found Ristic Study as a double-edged sword sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on how, like, your density of mana rocks to the cards you've drawn. If you've drawn enough mana rocks to, like, convert, and that's why we talk about Ristic Study is a really good card, but some decks it's really good and other decks it's not so good, because can they instantly convert that cards into advantage that wins them the game? Or is it a situation where, I got to set my dorks and discard 3 cards and pass, and okay, I play a land, and you know what I mean? Like, it takes time to set certain boards up because green is just a tad slower than other colors. But if you're like Blue Farm and I've drawn 10 cards and none of them are rituals or rocks, I'm in the same boat of I might play out like 1 value engine and discard my hand, and which is still good for farm.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you're feeling your graveyard for breach later. But in the short term, it's like, I'd rather get a couple rocks that I can immediately play out than do other cool stuff. So.
Yeah. And I always joke when I'm drawing bad in Blue Farm, like, I have the value engine half, I don't have the gas half. Cool. I see all my lands, some talisman. All right, great.
It's like one of those situations where you're like, no, I need you guys to be like, together, kiss.
Make them kiss, make the value kiss. And sometimes it doesn't kiss.
Just a little treat.
You whiff on an Adnaz.
A little treat.
A little treat.
A little soul ring. A little soul ring treat.
A little soul ring as a treat. A little soul ring into Signet as a treat.
As a treat.
But yeah, it's funny you bring that up too, because I find the majority of my Blue Farm games actually work well when I do more of a force multiplier strategy than just one solid draw engine. So I find I win more games personally when I get a Crom, an Esper Sentinel,
right.
Maybe a Lotho, I find the creature setup to be really strong, and the incremental value where you can remove one thing, but it doesn't dismantle the whole thing. Yeah. Whereas if you counter Ristic Study, we just sit there until we can assemble the Timna plan, and oftentimes we've lost.
Yeah, and it's the joke, right?
It is.
Cast Ristic, sit on Ristic, we're fine. I do agree, though. That's why the treasure build was so good. Kind of that mid, like, fall-ish time frame, because it was like, I'm going to go really creature-centric, and that way we have mana to convert the Ristic Study draw and sometimes Timna, sometimes Crom, into like really good advantage that we can then turn around and win with.
Yeah.
I think it's still a very solid build.
Yeah, and it was also, I'm not going to let Rogthras or TNT or Kinnan turn the corner on me in the process of this. We're still going to win the game. We just may push around 4 to 5 instead of between 2 and 4, right? It's a little bit slower take on Blue Farm, like quote unquote slower, right? But
yeah. Like in Kinnan, right? Your force multipliers are your clones.
Yeah.
Right? Every time you play one Ristic study, it's like, it's scary, but it's not like the end of the world in theory. But then it's clone the Ristic, clone the Ristic, clone the Ristic. All of a sudden there's 4 of them, and you're like, hold up. Now I'm terrified. I mean, I'm terrified on 2, let's be real here, right? But like, beyond 2, I'm just like...
Or Marnius Tithe. In a vacuum, Marnius, like what Marnius does, not that scary. You give it a smothering Tithe, terrifying.
Yeah. There's some of these synergies that are just like insane that you really have to be like, okay, you become the threat at that point. And so understanding when you're looking at a board where it's, Ristic, and a lot of times it's obvious. I think some of these are very obvious.
But some of them slide under the radar.
Some of them do. Like I think the reducers for a long time in Rogthras slid under the radar of like...
I think they still kind of do.
Sometimes. I feel like people are more likely, especially mine. I feel like people really kill my reducers nowadays.
As you should.
You should.
As you should.
Let me have them. Let me have what I want, all right?
No. Don't let him cook.
Just a little cook.
No.
Just a little bacon, a little sizzling.
Get Timna Thrasios out of the kitchen.
Yeah. I think, and that's, I think, where a lot of people will struggle, though, is where it's those ones that kind of slide under the radar. I do agree with that. And it's where, like kind of going back on the reducers part, the reducers slid under the radar for a while because I think people were so focused on, oh, there's so many creatures, and oh, there's a cradle, and I got to figure out how to deal with the cradle, or I deal with Rog. And I think people were missing the, like, if you just hit the reducers, 4 mana is terrible conversion rate. Like, it's terrible. They will not win the game if they're flipping 1 time on 4 mana, or even 2 times, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. Ristic will outpace them very quickly.
Eventually.
It's just naturally how the game goes, right? Cards, when you're putting that many cards in your hand, it's just going to go very well for you.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's a great lead into our number 4 topic today.
Yeah. So the 4th topic we want to talk about today when it comes to threat assessment is assessing board state versus cards in hand, right? So we see this discussion come up a lot with Blue Farm specifically and with the green creature decks that have come into prominence recently. And Jordan will rant about it as much as he can, where his creature board will get dismantled while a Blue Farm player, hopefully me, has 20 cards in hand.
You get a Thrasios and 3 Dorks, and all of a sudden people are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. Yep, you're the threat, buddy. And I'm like, hold on.
Going back to kind of putting our amateur psychologist tinfoil hats on for a second, I think there is something that just plays with people's mental, where you look at a table and you see 20 creatures, whereas you look at somebody's hand and you say, oh, how many cards in hand? Oh, 20. And they're going to go for the board before they worry about the cards in hand, right? Because the board is face-up information. You can see the synergy playing out in front of you. You can watch how you're losing. Whereas when you're looking at somebody's hand, there's kind of this still mystery to it, like they could have gas, they could be drawing the value half of their deck. You're not really sure how or if you're losing. So it's easy for those decks to kind of slide under the radar. I found it less and less so now. Like, everybody's aware of Blue Farm's BS, right?
As they should be.
No. Let me cook. But it's still something that happens, especially in Swiss rounds a lot, when people may not be as familiar with Blue Farm, when you get less experienced tournaments.
Sure. Sometimes I forget people have not heard of Blue Farm. And I'm like...
That's the thing, right? Like,
I do not know Blue Farm. But yeah, no, you're right.
Right? Like, and so when we get people who maybe say, like, hey, what does Timna Crom do? What's going on here? And they see 20 cards in hand, they may not understand the prevalence of the threat compared to the massive board state in front of them, especially as we have more switch over from kind of casual to CEDH, where that's really terrifying in a casual format, like a large board state.
That's true.
So It's kind of an interesting distinction that lies there, and it's difficult for people to threat assess, not even just newer people, but people in general, right? Because like I said, there's something about seeing the creatures laid out in front of you, seeing what they're doing, and seeing how you're getting cooked on board that says, I need to remove this right here, right now.
Every green player's experienced this. There is nothing more infuriating than the blue farm player drawing 15 cards while, like, let's say the rock side player is going off, and your board gets bowmastered to oblivion.
As it should.
And then when blue farm inevitably is like, breach, your uncountable grand of all share, and they look at you and they're like, what can you do to help? I don't know, bro. I could have done something like 10 creatures ago, but you had nuked me to oblivion because you could. Now what am I supposed to do? What do you want from me? I got nothing. I ain't got a dork. I ain't got any mana. There's nothing in sight for me to help you anymore. If I could have done something, I would have killed that damn Bowmaster. I hate Bowmaster. If I could ban a card, don't give me this power because it is gone. The second I get power, Bowmaster's gone. I fucking hate this guy. I could spend an hour and a half just on Bowmaster and how much I hate Bowmaster. It never punishes the player drawing. It only punishes the stupid green player, or maybe in a world in which Winota was dumb enough to show up at the table. Mm-hmm. Then the Winota gets destroyed. Poor Winota players. That card single-handedly ended the Winota's reign of terror.
It did.
Right? And like you took out an entire archetype of CEDH that was already struggle busting in stacks.
So is this the threat assessment podcast or the Jordan Drake Hates Orcish Bowmasters podcast?
We should rename it. It's no longer Drake Academy. It's now We Hate Bowmasters.
I don't hate Bowmasters.
So We Hate Bowmasters Club.
Speak for yourself, brother.
And its little cousin or big cousin, I don't know, Mayhem Devil, just as annoying.
Big brother Mayhem Devil.
At least with Mayhem Devil, though, there's like, I make a deliberate decision to like crack my treasures to activate it or something, right? Heuristic Study is extraordinarily frustrating.
You're coping.
I hate him.
Stop coping.
Why does
Stop making these people listen to you cope.
Why does Black get everything?
Black does not get everything.
Tutors, Bowmasters. That's all they need. That's all they need to screw my world up. In all seriousness, though, I think this is where the threat assessment does come into play, because the knee-jerk in these situations, and it's honestly kind of what inspires this episode, is these frustrating situations where you see the blue farm player draw 10 cards, and you're like, brother, like, they're gonna win. Like, please stop shooting me. Shoot them. Just shoot them in the face. Right? You're just asking nicely.
Here's the thing. It doesn't accomplish anything.
Yes, it does. It does. Because if they drop a Nas or they drop a Necro and you've been shooting my board down, what did you accomplish? You killed an Elvish Mystic or you killed a Birds of Paradise. Congratulations. I'm off of 1 mana. And then they go Necropotence and you go, that could have taken away cards from them.
If they have 30 cards in hand, we're beyond the Ad Nos plan.
Probably.
I'm dropping a Demonic Tutor, I'm saying Underworld Breach, and we're ending the game.
Probably.
It doesn't functionally matter at the point where we have 20 plus cards.
It would just make me feel better, though. Like, if we're going to lose, at least hurt their life, right?
Okay, sure.
But sure, ping my board down. I've had it happen where someone is actively winning, and they're like, oh, Bowmaster the Dork. And I'm like, why? We already lost. Like, this is just injury to insult. Like, I'm not even that bad, but like, I'm kind of mad because like, maybe there's a world in which he goes down to 1 life and we get to kill him. But no, kill my birds instead. Sure, he drew 15 cards. I guess we're okay with that. But my 1 mana, that's the problem. You're right. Sorry.
You guys ever want to rage bait this man? Misuse an Orcish Bowmasters at the table.
Like, I get it. It's easy money, right? You're like, I can nuke the green player, and then I can deal with the blue farm player later. That's never what happens. They don't deal with the blue farm player later. The blue farm player just wins.
Well, because Orcish Bowmasters doesn't deal with the blue farm player.
Yes, it does. It could if you'd start by
Not if they have a Heuristic Study. No, if they have the Esper Crom PFB setup I described earlier, sure, shoot their cute little creatures.
No, shoot them in the face. Eventually, you can only draw 40 cards before you're dead. And if they Nas, and then you Bowmaster them, then they're really SOL'd. And then maybe a wheel comes down, and then they're really hosed. But that's never what happens. shoot the green player.
Well,
shoot my Esper Sentinel, because my one card matters against their Rhystic Study.
Here's the thing, though. Your form of dealing with the blue farm player is waiting to win on top of the blue farm player.
What else am I supposed to do? Bowmaster would just kill my board anyway. Might as well flash in a high fae, flash in all my creatures. And maybe I get to cast something before Bowmasters goes, no. Oh, and really fuck no.
See, you're coping again.
I'm not.
They're supposed to let you win on top and Bowmaster the blue farm player?
Well, no, not if I'm actively winning, sure. But like in a world in which I'm not actively winning. Why? Why me?
Why me? This should be the title of this podcast. Why me?
So in this situation, in this scenario, there is always a balance in truthfulness of when do I start removing people's boards, right? When are they truly the threat based on board state versus what is in the hand? At a certain point, cards on board are still somewhat better than cards in hand. I mean, truly, because mana has been spent for them. They're active in doing the thing. Cards in hand are always opportunities, but they're not realized opportunities yet. Right? So that's the difference. Right. But for some decks, it doesn't matter. So like Rogsai, Ral, to a lesser extent like Atali, these decks don't necessarily need to see a lot of cards to very quickly convert to win. Right? Most of the time, even when they're seeing lots of cards, they're doing it like in one turn, right? Where it's like a wheel, and then I'm still going, and there's really nothing you're doing to stop me. Versus a deck like Blue Farm, where I'm sitting on Rhystic Study, and it's like, okay, now I need to start threat assessing the 15 cards in your hand versus like a Rogthrast that's got, 10 mana on board. And that's where I think it gets really, really tricky. But what I've noticed in these situations is it becomes very easy to tell who's closer. Again, it kind of comes around the force multiplier issue. And what, in a situation in which Blue Farm is drawn, like, let's say 12 cards, right? And Rogthrast is on, Cradle, and they've got 10 mana based on like their Cradle and all their setup, right? At a certain point, you have to start making the determination of how quickly can Rogthrast convert that to win, and how quickly can Farm convert its 15 cards to win. So if Farm goes to its turn and dumps rock, now they clearly are moving closer to converting to win. Whereas Rogthrast, if they're still stuck on, I have 10 mana, but I'm spending 8 of it a turn, flipping Thrasios, looking for the right cards to like push that engine over the line, right? Get those force multipliers in play, like Seedborn, like the Producers, or they're just going to say, oh, I've got enough creatures, I can go ahead and push my Abora win, right? Until they've gotten to that point, which they always can, that's where you have to be like carefully constructing. And I think part of that is seat order. Part of that is how the board is developed before then. Like if it's Blue Farm and it's literally like 2 lands and they had to use a Dark Ritual to get their Rhystic Study into play and they drew 15 cards, I'm not overly concerned right off the bat. Right. Maybe they can convert. But in a world in which they're sitting on like a hand that bad, I'm like, The
mana's still their biggest issue.
Right. And the mana squeeze, I've seen it so many times too, where it's like I nose off anyway, and then I can't convert because the mana was too tight. Without Dockside, without Crypt, I think it's a lot tighter now. Yeah. And I think people forgot like how good those cards were at saving you from those situations. So I think Naz's are a little bit more 50-50.
They are.
Even like when I've lost to Naz, a lot of times it feels like it comes down to like the last 2 or 3 cards. Like it's close almost every time.
It is.
Like truly.
It really is.
So those situations are tricky. I think it's the hardest thing in CEDH when you are threat assessing properly to know when the threat is in the hand and when it's on the board. And until you get a lot of experience doing that, I think that's where that threat assessment comes in. Like, I feel like you play enough games where you are in the situation I just described, where it's like, cool, I killed the green player, but then I immediately lost to Blue Farm. Or it's like, kind of the situation we had last night in the practice game we played, right? Where it was like, we stopped Sisse.
Right.
To just lose to Kinnan.
Nuke to Kinnan, yeah.
And like, there was a lot of discussion that should have happened on removing certain pieces from Kinnan's board in specific order. Like, I think the Path to Exile came out too slow.
I agree.
I was playing Vojo last night. I was just goofing off. I was having fun doing it.
This man chose a deafening silence over removal.
Yeah, hindsight, not smart, but I was also trying to survive Lily's turn and deal with the Kinnan. It was tough. It was in a bad spot.
I wasn't winning.
You lied. You were lying. You literally said you had win on your turn.
Not at that point. That was the rotation before.
I don't believe that.
No, because I had to waste the wish claw to get removal.
Right. But you said if you hadn't had to use it for removal, you could have pushed win, right? Because there was still the stacks piece out.
Well, it gets dicey.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You had it if I don't cast the silence.
No.
I don't believe you. You said you had it.
I had the ability to cast Underworld Breach. I don't know if I get the rest of the pieces without a tutor in my graveyard.
You had the Wish Claw.
Right, for the Breach.
We'll just get Brain Freeze.
Without a Breach?
No, you have. Oh, you didn't have Breach. Oh, I misunderstood. Okay, I thought you said you had Breach in hand.
No.
Because you said I could cast Breach. I see you had to tutor for
right.
Gotcha.
And then I don't have another tutor in my graveyard to follow up the Breach. So I'm breaching to what end? You know what I mean? So
well, then what did you mean you could push win? What were you reaching for then? What was your dicey line?
I don't remember the cards in my hand now. The point is, it got suspicious.
It's already gotten suspicious. I don't know that I believe you.
Okay, sure.
Either way, I had to try and survive. Voja's not a great deck, and we were in a bad spot. But I was talking to Matt Hayes about it, because he also plays Voja, and I got super excited to like bring the deck out. So I just was like, screw it. I haven't really updated the list in a while or tested like a lot of the new cards. Like Springleaf Parade and Terra Symbiosis, like in theory, these are good cards, but I've never actually played them in a game. So I was like,
all the cards you didn't see last night.
I did get to play Go-Go though, and that was cool.
You did do that.
That actually made what? It was like
20 damage.
And 4 cards.
Yeah. It's pretty disgusting.
And 2 extra 1/1 counters on everybody. Yeah.
Back on your Naya BS.
Yeah, I think Go-Go would be hot in Malcolm, by the way.
Interesting.
It might be a little too expensive because you already have Knuckles as well, which I also think would be kind of cool. I might be overcooking, but I also just really like Go-Go.
That's fair.
Cool card.
That's fair.
And it doesn't see enough play. But it's basically a roaming throne.
Yeah.
And like, why are you on roaming throne, actually? I was thinking about this. I'm sorry.
You're getting sidetracked.
We're probably overcooking on the 4-drops for Malcolm, but like, I was like, wait, we can do...
Malcolm is 3 and 4-drop tribal. If I add one more 4-drop to that, I'm dropping Nas. Unpopular opinion, the Malcolm Discord's gonna sue me. I understand, but like, I'm dropping Nas, guys.
I was wondering though, because like I ran Nas in the Collier list I was running, and like that's a bunch of 7 and 8 drops, and it worked most of the time. Surprisingly so. Did
it work?
I won games. I only lost like 1 game on that deck.
Nosing? You won games nosing.
Well, okay.
Okay, yeah, let's be clear.
I nosed exactly 1 game.
And how did it go for you?
I think it was fine. I got Breach. I got the pieces I needed.
Okay. Before the dragons. So variance didn't didn't cook you that one time.
I think I hit a dragon. Maybe 2.
Okay. Did we have to stop after that?
Yeah, for sure. It was like 16 damage. But like it worked, right? That's the point. Is it kind of worked?
This stresses me out. This conversation stresses me out.
We're so sidetracked. I'm so sorry.
Anyways,
to wrap up this point, I'm sure you probably got a little lost though as we were talking about 1,000 other topics.
Hit green's board. Let the heuristic study on blue farm's board resolve. Threat assessment is a lie. Blue farm wins. That's a wrap, guys.
Okay. Ignore literally all of that. Seriously now, because Lily doesn't know what that word means apparently. Numbers and seriously, those are her weaknesses.
I will go get some chunky mashed potatoes.
No. Anyway, final thoughts on this is, just be really careful about how you're assessing, right? Understand the decks you're playing against. They will tell you where you kind of need to understand. There's times to leave the green player alone. There's times to dismantle the board. And there's times to understand that the cards in hand are in fact scarier than the cards on board. That comes from experience. Playing a lot of games, especially against decks that are particularly in the red, blue, black area. Like if they got any combination of those colors, they're probably cards in hand are a little scarier. I'm just saying. You can glare at me all you want. I'm saying it's probably true. Roxai, Ral, Vivi. I'm just saying. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying. Picking up and I'm putting down. That'll lead us into topic number 5. What happens now that I've threat assessed? Now I've gone through all these steps. I've taken the advice that you've heard here. I feel like I've got a great assessment of the board. Now what? The now what is how to communicate that to your opponents. Because not everyone agrees with your threat assessment. And that is an extraordinarily frustrating experience. Again, like I described, Bowmaster nuking my board while someone's winning, frustrating. It happens. Nothing you can do about it. Except you can't. Politicking is always an option. And I think that is the hardest part, is convincing people that your threat assessment is correct. A lot of times it just comes down to pointing at pieces on the board and explaining how they interact with each other. Like again, I think like we talked about, force multipliers, a lot of times fly under the radar. People don't realize how threatening the board just got, right? Someone drops a piece and everyone goes, yeah, pass, pass, pass. And you're like, whoa, I'm not passing. Yeah. Like, are we not going to talk about, a Kinnan and a Smothering Tithe? Especially if it's like a deck that could clearly cast Fairy Mastermind and then very quickly win the game. Like, we're not going to talk about this at all. Like, no one's terrified. You know what I mean? And it's those type of games where you kind of have to, and honestly, it'll help your politicking. When you are assessing threats correctly and then are able to articulate that to the other players and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the board and what we need to worry about, then it's really hard to politic against that, right? You can deflect all you want. Trust me, I do it. I'll deflect all day long. Is my deflections good? It kind of depends on how scary my board is, right? Sometimes it's so obvious, it's like, you could kill me, but why would you want to? And then it's like, they're counting my mana and it's like 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm like, I get it. I'm scary. Right? We don't have to keep talking about it. Other times, though, it'll be like a player who is maybe like a tick ahead of you, but they start pointing the finger at you real hard. Instead of arguing with players, because it's really, some players, they'll just bully you, right? Like, clearly will bully you. They'll just talk over you. They'll keep yapping. And nothing you say is going to get any ground because they're just going to continue to yap. The thing you say, in these situations is, look, I hear he's trying to politic against me. I just want to point out the board state that we're currently in, right? The Kinnan player, he is probably the one yapping because it's always Kinnan's yapping. Kinnan's got 9 mana and he clearly wants to clone his Rhystic Study again. We should be really scared of that. I'm not saying I'm not a threat. I'm saying I'm not the threat. That is, I think, one of the most key things you can say in a game of CEDH. You can be a threat without being the threat that needs to be dealt with. It's fine to have a good board. You can acknowledge you have a good board. I think trying to say, I don't have a good board, for one, it's probably just a lie. Like, most of the time, if people think you're a threat, there's a reason for that to some degree. Sometimes it's literally just, I played against this deck and I hate it. Like, Kinnan on 7 mana. You can say you're not a threat. We've all had the experience of, I'm not a threat, guys. I'm not a threat. Don't kill my Kinnan.
I just get one spin.
One spin. Con Sphinx.
Hullbreaker Horror.
You're like, thanks.
Free mana rock. Oh, I win the game.
Or it's like Nyx Bloom Ancient. And they're like, oh, Grim Monolith. And you're like, we've all been there.
Nezahul.
We've all been there. It's terrible. It's a terrible experience. And when you're in these situations, there is proper ways. Like I said, I think we've identified how you can kind of articulate the board state, how you can identify and show off, hey, I think this is a threat because he's also got this, this, and this, right? If a Rhystic Study comes down on Kinnan's board, that should be a red flag. That should be a major alarm bell because that is the piece that they're going to build the rest of their board around. If a Smothering Tithe comes down on Marnius's board, that's a piece that all alarms should be around. And you should be talking about that. Again, like I said earlier, threat assessment should happen at every point of the game. At no point should you stop threat assessing. Because if you do so, you lose agency in the game. If you've given up and said, I don't really know who's the problem anymore. No, wrong. It's wrong. You have to be saying, okay, I think this person's that. Even if you're wrong, even if your threat assessment is completely wrong, sometimes it's, you can listen to other people, understand that they don't have your best interest in mind. So if they're politicking saying, well, I think that person's the threat, what that tells you is I should start assessing their board more carefully now and then compare it to the person they say is the threat. If they're right, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. If they're right, then okay, it's like, okay, I'll cautiously accept that for now. If they're wrong and that they're clearly deflecting, well, now you can point the finger back and say, well, I think you're the threat based on factors A, B, and C. And it really works when they point the finger at you. Because sometimes when I've sat in pods, especially against players who know me, they will point the finger at me no matter what I do, right? Like, even if I don't really have a threatening board, they'll say, oh, well, he's the threat. And they don't really give a good reason why. They'll just be like, oh, well, watch out. He's Tim Thrasios. Okay, I'm a bad deck. Stats pro, I'm a bad deck. We live on that way. Right? But like, sure, you can point the finger at me and say, I think you're scary because you're you. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Sure. I mean, there's nothing I can do about that if you're like, I think he's the scary person. Mm-hmm. But you can counter that by saying, okay, well, like my board's not that scary. Whereas, that's Vivi with +7 on it and drawing 7 cards. Mm-hmm. We should probably be scared of a potential curiosity coming down, mm-hmm. right? When you have a good grasp on the board state and you have a good grasp of the threat assessment, you can build your politicking base from that point to identify where you're kind of, almost where your angles are, right? It's not that we're angle shooting, but where we can identify weaknesses in the opponent's game plan and in their own politicking game plan and attack that directly and say, okay, if you're going to point the finger at me, you are the threat. Why are you pointing the finger so hard at me? What are you trying to cover for? And then kind of build your game plan from there.
Yeah, and I feel like going to what Jordan said, once you've correctly threat assessed the board, right, and you begin to politic the board, when somebody else starts heavily yapping, hey, that person's the problem, hey, that person's the problem, hey, you're the problem, right, you can start to see the deflection kind of build in real time, right? You can see them kind of, pointing at other pieces on the board, and that's when the red flags have to start going off, and you have to ask yourself, well, what do they want to protect on their board? What are they trying to land? And oftentimes what it is these players that are trying to deflect are trying to bait interaction out of people's hands, yep. right? They're trying to get important pieces. Like, I think I talked about it in an episode before, right? But whenever I was on Malcolm Vile and a scary creature would drop before I was going to drop my Glinthorn, favorite question, right? Does anybody have anything for a creature? Can anybody deal with creatures? Nobody can deal with creatures? Interesting. Okay, cool. Right? And so when people start asking these questions about threats on board, it becomes very imperative that you, the player that's receiving this question says, I need to be careful with how I answer this. So it not only informs your in-game politics, it informs how you interact with other people's in-game politics, right? Because like Jordan said, like everybody says, your opponents don't have your best interests at heart. So not only are you able to more effectively politic when you have a good understanding of the board, you're able to kind of correctly assess when your opponents might be BSing you or trying to elicit information out of you. And you can kind of see, oh, I see what angle you're coming at. Oh, you're a Kinnan or you're a Malcolm Vile player and you're asking why people have creature interaction. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. And then you can kind of build your strategy from there and say, okay, well, I probably shouldn't answer this question. I should be coy about how I answer this question. Oh, I have interaction for something. Oh, I have something I'm not willing to say. And then start thinking about, okay, how do I deal with the threat in front of me and how do I deal with the threat afterwards if they're allowed to get a turn?
Yeah, I agree.
It's a dynamic and kind of changing push and pull that exists at the table. And oftentimes, sometimes you're just plain wrong, right? Like, we say all of this. We've been here for, an hour or whatever, and none of this is an exact science, right? This comes with a huge caveat that sometimes you're just wrong, and sometimes your opponents just have it. Or sometimes they don't have it, right? Sometimes the blue farm player with 30 cards in hand whiffs, and you have the crap half of blue farm. Sometimes the Malcolm Vile player doesn't have the Glinthorn, or the Rogthras player dumped their hand, but they dumped their hand and they don't have any follow-up, So it's an interesting dynamic that exists at tables. But trends in decks and play patterns become predictable, especially within play groups, right? If you're just playing locally and not going to tournaments, you can learn how your play group plays and how those decks play.
Yeah. I mean, even tournaments, right? Like, you play against Rogthras enough, you'll start to identify it. Yeah. You play against Blue Farm enough, you'll start to see. And a lot of this comes with experience. And we know that. And that's part of why we're kind of doing this, is to show, like, where you can start to build that threat assessment experience base from. Mm-hmm. Because it does take experience. But once you know what to look for in games and you're kind of understanding these kind of like pillars, I guess, you can build from, where it's like, okay, I know how to stop, I know how to assess early game. And then I know how to assess the decks based on the cards they really want. And then I understand force multipliers. And then I understand, okay, what decks are dangerous with cards in hand versus cards not in hand. Mm-hmm. And then, how do I put all that together and politic to where my opponents are going to agree with my threat assessment. Because if I'm correct in my assessment and my opponents also agree with me, then generally I am usually not the one getting destroyed.
Yeah.
And I'm usually in a position of power, so to speak, because I have influence over the table and I get to kind of dictate where the interaction goes and who's being dealt with. And that opens up my windows now to push wins. Because if you're using all your creature, like for my deck specifically TNT, if you're using all your creature interaction on other people, right? If you're killing the Kinnan and the Rogdrass, and then I go to my turn and I'm like, Abora? Nope, no one's got anything? Cool. GG's, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing. See y'all next time. You know? Yeah.
The politicking does help with kind of the window theory part of it. It all lends itself to each other as you play the game.
Yeah, and it's not even like I'm gonna have to lie and manipulate and like argue with people. It's I'm gonna make correct arguments. It's why like I've heard people say they get so frustrated when they play against me because a lot of times I politic directly from the board. Right? I'm not gonna sit there and argue like, oh, you're the threat. Oh no, they're the threat. Look at them. Like it's wasting my time, right? Yeah. And I don't think it accomplishes anything. But what I will do is I'll point out and say, look, that person's got blah 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 blah. We should be really careful here. Yeah. And then if they go, well, you've got blah, blah, I'm like, yeah, like I'm in a good spot. I'm not going to deny that. But if you think I'm in such a great spot, let's trade boards. I'm sure you've heard me say that 1,000 times, right? Like, and they always look at you like I'm serious. Like, I'll trade. We can trade. I wish we could.
And then you'll say, let's trade boards, and then you win the game, which is the funny part. Like,
I mean, sometimes I've got it, right?
Be so for real.
I mean, I probably won.
Be so for real.
I probably won from either way. Right? Like, a lot of times, if it's like we both had a lot of mana, and I'm sitting on like a finale or a Nature's Rhythm, it's like I won either way.
I need this man to be so serious about his board states.
I am serious. No, you know that it's frustrating because you know I'm right 90% of the time when I argue. It's why it's so frustrating to politic against me because it's like...
Well, that's why it's frustrating for player C because they're losing to player A or to you, right? But they're still losing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's always 3 losers at a table.
Yeah.
Or we're all losers, I guess, when we draw.
We're all losers when we draw.
There's never 2 losers. It's either 3 or 4, I guess.
That's fair.
Or 1 loser, I suppose. Unless someone's an asshole and then all 3 team up and take them out. Then I guess there was the 1 loser.
That's fair. I mean, it does, regardless of if you're an asshole or not, it becomes a 3v1 at a certain point. Once everybody has threat assessed, agreed on a threat, and somebody pushes a win.
Right. I'm saying, like, in games where it's like, we don't care about winning anymore as long as that person doesn't win.
Oh, yeah.
Those pods are miserable to be in, by the way. I've had some weird ones where it's like...
Yeah.
You're like, uh-oh.
Especially when 2 players have beef with each other that you don't know about, and you just sit down at a table and, hey guys, there's the death stares, there's obvious animosity, and you're like, oh.
It's that type of game.
That type of pod. Cool.
All right, you want to transition to some audience questions now that we've covered our main topic today?
Yeah, let's do some questions. So our first question comes from our Discord, from our friend July. What kind of analysis are you guys doing, or at least trying to do, when it comes to guessing the meta of a particular tournament? Is there a rhyme and reason to figuring something like that out?
So yes and no. I think partly it's like national trends. You can kind of get an idea of like where the meta is trending based on, previous weekend's tournaments, cards that have come out. Like, I find that when one turbo deck does really well at like a major event, it becomes turbo for the next couple weeks until the people who switch to turbo realize turbo still is really frustrating to play. Because it is, right? You don't really have a ton of agency in the game. It's like I try to gun for it, I get stopped, and then unless I can immediately put another one on the stack, which I usually do and get stopped again. Yeah. That's like, I think I've heard more people get frustrated playing turbo than mid-range. Because it's funny, it's always like mid-range players get frustrated against turbo because they feel like the turbo player always wins. But then if you talk to turbo players, they get frustrated because it's like, well, how do I avoid getting silenced every game? It's like, yeah, somebody's
wrong. Who's winning these games then?
Or the reality is it's a good healthy mixture of decks that are winning, right?
Yeah.
I think when you look at like national trends, and you also start to notice it locally, right? If you play in the same local groups enough, you're playing a tournament every week, you'll start to notice as things start shifting, either, CEDH is a pendulum. On one side, you've got mid-range. On the other side, you've got turbo. Wait, is that a pendulum? That is a pendulum. I'm going to say it's pendulum. I could be wrong. I don't really know.
It should be like scales.
Scales? No, it's a pendulum, right? Because it has to swing.
Okay, sure.
I guess scales works too, right?
Yeah, thank you.
I like pendulum better.
All
We're
right.
gonna go with pendulum.
You
Anyway, at the opposite ends of the pendulum, it's turbo, mid-range. That's the only two viable archetypes in a tournament level CEDH. Normal CEDH, you can probably run stacks because you can be there for 3 hours and nobody cares. Well, your friends might care. They might hate you for it. But other than that, you don't have to be there for 3 hours. In tournaments, because you only have 80 minutes, you have to move at a particular pace that stacks decks generally cannot do in a CEDH tournament.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can, but a lot of games I've seen, they draw. They draw like crazy.
You just play win con-less stacks.
Okay, that's crazy. You're definitely not winning any CEDH. You're 007. We're going to James Bond it, right? But on the pendulum, so a lot of times you'll see the shifts in CEDH. The turbo decks will be, so like you have turbo over here. The turbo decks will be the high ones right now, right? They'll be the ones that everyone's switching to, everyone's playing because they get frustrated at losing to a turbo deck. So like, I'll just play turbo. Okay, well, when everyone switches to turbo, the players that stay mid-range and didn't switch start to eat them alive eventually, right? Because all they do is play a little responsibly. The turbo players get really frustrated, and the pendulum swings. And then you get really frustrated playing mid-range, where it's like, I don't know how to beat a 3 Ristic Study game, or there's like 5 Smothering Tithes, and everything's being cloned, and I don't know how to win. I just won't, or I get frustrated at politicking, and I can't find a way to politic. So I go back to turbo, and the pendulum swings. And this is the natural order of CEDH. Yeah. This is what happens. Literally all year long, you'll see it. There'll be a time where turbo is good, and then it'll switch to mid-range, and then it'll go back to turbo, and then back to mid-range. Sometimes it's dependent on the cards that are selected, right? Like I think right now Turbo's really in because of Hexing Squelcher.
I think so.
I don't know that card.
I don't know that it's single-handedly.
It's 100 card singleton format, right?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, I mean, I don't even see Grand Abolisher that much in my deck.
Exactly.
And like I can tutor for it. I have like 8 green tutors, and I still don't tutor for it that often.
I mean, you cut it.
I did cut it because I don't tutor.
How are you going to find it?
Well, I didn't tutor for it ever. Like it just never came up. I'm always winning other ways.
You are.
I think Rock Thrust is a great example. Rock Thrust doesn't run any silence effects. Like some run Dosin, but most of them don't.
Yeah.
And they still win like crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crutch. Silence is a crutch.
There's no real set formula, at least that we have, for analyzing trends of what we're going to see in metas. I think it's just...
We guess.
Yeah, honestly. And based on what we've experienced before. So, we mentioned going out to Atlanta a lot. So we can pretty much guess what we're going to see at a CCS tournament. When Semi-Blue was really big, we guessed that we would see at least a couple of those.
I didn't see any.
I think I saw one. But before, when a lot of people were playing Magda, we'd be guaranteed at least to see...
A bunch of Magda?
Yeah, a Magda or two out of the day, right? So a lot of it is based on experience. And I think this was why the Royal Rumble last year was really frustrating for us, because we didn't have experience with that meta and with those playstyles. And so while we knew the decks, playing the players was a little bit different, right? So... all of that to say, we don't have a set calculation for how we're assessing the meta. It's just kind of what we've seen before, what we've seen on EDH Top 16, and kind of also what prominent pilots are going to be there, right? Like what strategies are being brought by certain people. But even then, those are only one-off individuals. It doesn't dictate the whole meta. So...
I think like when you go to certain regions, you kind of know, right? When you go to California, it's going to be a little faster. They run a lot of turbo out there. When you go Northeast, it's like a little bit more mid-rangier-ish. Like there's still some turbo elements. Down here, I can't even tell you what it is right now. Legitimately. I mean, Royal Rumble was weird. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to get into our meta breakdown of why stuff was weird.
Well, like that...
Not even weird, just different.
I mean, you can almost argue Northeast is not as mid-range anymore based on that. Ohio is very like kind of all over the place. It's, got some really good turbo players, but also some really good mid-range players. So it's a good and healthy mix. I think it's really like the United States is huge and there's a lot of metas based on our region. And it's funny when you get these big events because they all kind of meld together. But like you saw at Steel City, right? Turbo decks reigned supreme.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 4-pod turbo. It was the top 4 was a turbo, all turbo pod.
It was, yeah.
And you can guess that, right? When you've got that many players coming together, odds are like some turbo deck that just nobody's really dealing with is going to sneak through all day because somebody's got to get lucky.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's got to be the one.
Turbo does dominate Swiss, right? So it's not surprising to see it dominate through the Swiss rounds and then get through top 16, get into top 4. When there's such a high density of them, statistically, you're going to see a turbo top 4.
Rao's like a great example of that. Rao has terrific conversion to top 16 numbers and horrible conversion to top 4 and wins.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, it happens.
Next question.
Oh. Black Buddha 7485. Any chance you do a full TNT episode?
Would you guys want to see that? I've already done one before. I guess there's been new cards.
Not on this channel.
That's fair. That's what I'm saying. Like, would it be worth... Let me know in the comments. Is it worth it to y'all to do a full TNT episode? I feel like not everyone wants to see that. But I will talk. Give me a chance to talk about TNT. We'll talk. Because there's I think there's 3 viable TNT builds rolling around right now.
Okay, save it for the episode.
Okay. Sure. Next question.
So this one is Bard the Howler. I have a question. What is your opinion on a card like Shaman's Trance? I run Blue Farm, and I really dislike Mnemonic Betrayal. If I get my Chromox, it's the first card I pitch to it. I know it's a great card and a meta call, but more often than not, it ends up being a dead card in hand. Seemed like Trance would be a shut down a lot of lines, particularly Breach, Lumra, etc. It's easier to cast pip-wise, and the instant speed flexibility, offensively or defensively, seems like it should at least be worth testing. No one, as far as I know, has any game testing on it. Also seems really terrible if it's fished out of my deck and used against me. Thoughts?
Bad card.
Bad card.
Bad card. Bad card because you have to... So unlike Breach or even Mean Bet gives you the ability to cast this card, cast cards out of your graveyard. Shaman's Trance does not. I'm actually going to read the text for you guys real quick. All right, so this card, Shaman's Trance, it's 2 in a red, instant, until end of turn, other players can't play cards from their graveyards, and you may play cards from other players' graveyards as though they were in your graveyard. The problem with this card is because it says you may play cards from other players' graveyards as though they were in your graveyard, does not actually mean you get to cast those cards.
Right.
It means they're in there as if they were in your graveyard. So, for example, if your opponent had like a Lava Dart in their graveyard, you could cast the Lava Dart. But if they have a Chrome Mox, you don't get to cast the Chrome Mox.
Right.
Like, that's not how that works.
Right.
Now, if you cast a Breach and you use Shaman's Trance, that's a little hot.
Yeah.
Right?
But you have to be on your turn, right? You have to have the Breach on. Well, I guess not necessarily.
It's an instant.
It's an instant. That's fair. That's fair.
The biggest issue, though, is you're basically running it mostly for the graveyard hate, and then, like, the incidental, I get to use it for my stuff. What's great about Meme Bet is, like, let's say someone pushes a Breach line and doesn't get there, and their Breach, goes to graveyard. I now get to take their Breach with Meme Bet. If they use a Thoracle, I get to take their Thoracle. There's no restriction to casting those. I just get to do it. Right. And especially if you're in, like, specific decks, I've seen some really hot ones where it's like Frank Thras, right? Runs Meme Bet, and then they have the Cradle, and then they tap for 7, and now they get to cast all the cards out of their graveyard for green mana, right? Which is hot.
Yeah.
Most of the time, though, you're seeing it like Blue Farm and Roxai, which I think are like the 2 most common decks that probably run that card.
Yeah.
Maybe Kefka probably too, because you're discarding.
Probably.
So you like Grixis Shells. And in those decks, you're basically using it to fuel a win. When I look at Shaman's Trance, I don't see, unless someone's already dropping the Breach, and generally that's pretty narrow use case on a card that's like, I'm going to cast it, and I'm going to cast my Breach, and now I get everybody's graveyard. Breach doesn't really require that much setup anyway, so I don't feel like adding a bad card that's graveyard hate on other players is good enough for you. Like, if we're that worried about graveyards, I'd just cast Drannith. Honestly.
Yeah, so you mentioned dealing with Lumra, or that's a deck that you see a lot in your local meta, and like Jordan said, Drannith probably just deals with that if they can't cast the Lumra, right? So
you just got to get the Drannith out fast enough.
Yeah.
But you also have to have this card in hand too.
Exactly. I kind of agree. It's a little bit too narrow and it's playing for niche scenarios that aren't going to come up more often than not, and running it is probably just going to frustrate you more than it is help you, honestly. And something like Meme Bet, while yes, it can be a good pitch to Chrome Mox, I've experienced it myself running Grixis Shells. When it hits, it really hits. And I find the ceiling of Meme Bet is going to be higher than the ceiling of a card like Shaman's Trance. And also, it's a really slippery slope teching in specific cards like that just for Lumra or just for Underworld Breach, because when you go into metas where you don't play with a lot of Breach decks or you don't see the Lumra, right? What if we sit down and it's TNT, Kinnan, Rogthras? Then that card is just dead. You know what I mean? You have something sitting in hand that could also just be pitched to Chrome Mox, and you may be better off having the meme bet because at least you can get some value from the TNT, from the Rogthras, right? So it's about optimizing your deck for all foreseeable scenarios. You know, not every scenario because that's impossible, but everything that you can, and I don't think this card does that.
I agree.
Do you have some questions for us?
I do have some questions. So this question comes from Shazam. I'm on TNT. Am I under a Oculus? Yes, Oculus. In TNT, it's pretty hot. 5/5 flyer. We can Neoform into it. We can Eldritch into it. We can Finale into it. We can Nature's Rhythm into it. I guess we can Invasion into it. We don't run Invasion, but I guess we could, right? We can Chord into it. Is there anything else we can do into it? I guess we can cast it. There has been times. I got brain freezed once for some random reason. Like someone just cast it, targeted me, and I was like, looking at the Oculus Man, I was like, sick. And I just hard casted that. That was pretty cool. Sorry.
You and that Oculus.
I love that card.
You love that card.
Yeah, and it's good in TNT, specifically in Tree Farm, because it does two things. It fuels our Cradle count by putting a ton of, the Manifest Dreading puts all the bodies onto the battlefield. And that helps our Cradle count really quickly because it's 3 bodies basically in a rotation. So I go from, the Oculus plus whatever creatures on the board to immediately +3, which is pretty crazy. And then, of course, if it's 6 round for rotations, it just gets better and better and better. On top of that, because it's a 5/5 flyer and it's making me 2/2s, if I cast Tymna, a lot of times I definitely get the Oculus through, right? There's very little in CEDH that can stop a 5/5 flyer. Even most other flyers are just like, get out of the way. Eyeball coming through. And then if I get enough 2/2 bodies, especially if I'm like flipping over stuff I can't like flip back up, like they're just dead, like almost better in my graveyard to a certain extent, then I'll just swing it at stuff. And like I'm taking out people's creatures if they want to block, which is great for me.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going down on resources for resources I'm going to get back anyway.
Yeah.
With the Oculus. So cool card. I don't know that it's good outside of TNT. Like I was looking at like a weird Razakith build in Frank Thras, but I was like, do I really need more cards in the graveyard? I don't know. It was like something I was experimenting with. I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah.
But it was a thought. Because like Frank doesn't do much unless you're winning.
That's true.
So it's like Neoform Frank into Oculus. But I might be overcooking. I'm probably overcooking.
That sounds like overcooking.
But yes, it's hot. Final thought.
Next question.
Our final question comes from Bite-Sized MTG. Banger, can we get this on Spotify? We are indeed on Spotify. If you guys did not know that, we post the Spotify link in the description of our videos. So just check that out below. I get to do the below thing. Hold on. Yeah, the below thing. Yeah, Bite-Sized MTG is awesome. I love Zach. I love that whole crew. They're awesome guys. I love their content.
Yeah. And I know another question before on another one of our episodes said, when can we do the collab? So
Ooh. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
I'd love to collab with Zach.
Yeah.
Zach's awesome.
Literally anytime they want.
Anytime they want. Maybe we can get something going.
Maybe.
All right. For the last part for today, we'll talk about kind of the meta we saw. We're going to talk a little bit on California, but honestly, it was very turbo pilled and very Kinnan heavy. Like really Kinnan heavy.
Yeah. Too Kinnan heavy.
So it kind of touches back to our kind of the trend we saw where we expected to be a little bit more turbo leaning slightly right now. I think especially with Squelcher, people are testing it out. So there's not a whole lot to say about it. Like the California meta is very defined, I feel like. There's not a lot of surprises when I look out there and I see their events.
I don't know. I thought 5 Kinnans was surprising.
I think Kinnan got a lot of interesting pieces on this set too that they're kind of testing. And I think Kinnan is just so obnoxious to play against right now that people are realizing how obnoxious it is, and more and more people are picking it up.
I expected more Rogthras, though. Kinnan, obnoxious, yes. I expected more Rogthras.
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. But also, there's not usually a lot of Rogthras.
There's not Rogthras pilots out there anyways, so that's valid.
Yeah. If you're from California, let us know. Do we have your meta pegged down, or
are we just wrong?
Are we just wrong? Yeah. We don't play in California, so we don't know.
I mean, Tim and Adargo won another massive West Coast event.
It's like the third time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. So That's pretty cool.
The interesting meta for today, though, the Royal Rumbles meta, wild.
So spicy.
It's the wildest meta I've ever seen. There's not even a takeaway from this. Spice is in, I guess. That's the takeaway.
We sat down to assess this, and we were just like, what is going on in this
Timna Halana, Scion of the Ur-Dragon, Malcolm Tana coming back from the freaking graveyard. Kevin's still killing it on Thras Vile.
Yeah.
We saw Gwenum do really well.
We did.
What else crazy thing did we see?
There's a Lumra, right?
Two Lumras.
More Lumras than Blue Farm. Blue Farm stonks down, guys.
One Blue Farm.
One Blue Farm.
I think a couple Rock Grass, a couple Cannon.
TNT.
A TNT Max P.
TNT.
Yep, did on that. It's just crazy. Also, I'm really glad finally someone cut the top 40. I've been dying to see how that would look. I think it's cool. More players playing kind of these deathmatch style games. I hate the win-in pods.
Same.
I'm going to get on my soapbox again.
Same.
Like third soapbox of this episode. But everyone, I don't know anyone who enjoys the experience of sitting down in your win-in pod and you're against two players that are playing for draw because they don't need to win. They just need to draw and get their extra point. And sometimes they don't even need that extra point. Like it's really tournament dependent on it. If they lose, it doesn't even matter. Yep. I literally lost the win-in pod for other people at the forest fight, and I was like 8th still. Like it did not functionally matter. I mean, it would have been nice to not get seat 3, I guess. But like I usually do well from seat 3, so whatever. Anyway, getting on my tangent again. They create weird situations because the advantage. So like in that pod, right? I play for draw. I don't need a win. I'm more incentivized to play carefully.
Yeah.
And then there's two people who can't take draw.
Yeah.
So it creates this weird game of like they're going to keep pushing because they have to. All I have to do is sit there and just counter everything, and then like if a window opens up, sure I'll push. But like I don't need to push. There's no incentive for me to push.
No, yeah.
So it creates
a really shitty dynamic.
It's like you're punished really early for losing early.
You are.
And you're rewarded. I think the reward for winning early is really, I don't know. It's unbalanced, I guess. It's like the right word to put it. I think it creates really weird games because there's also one of the worst things I've ever experienced was player plays Ristic Study, player feeds Ristic Study unless we agree to draw. And they just don't care. They're just going to keep feeding Ristic Study. That was their strategy to draw the game.
Yeah.
We lose to player 1 who didn't need to win, right? Like they didn't. They were locked, like hard locked. I think that put them into like second, right? Like that's how hard locked they were.
Okay.
Or first, whatever, right? Like they were first or second coming out Swiss. And you're feeding the Ristic Study over and over again, and then you look at us and you're like, draw. And I'm like, bro, I can't draw. Like, if I lose, it's literally the same result as if I draw. Like, stop asking me. At a certain point, it was getting obnoxious. And then he was like, he was getting pissed off that we wouldn't draw. And I'm like, brother, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I can't draw this game. I have to play to win. Like, I don't have a choice.
Yeah. I think it remains to be seen whether top 40 will fix that, though.
Because then it just shifts
because the bubble, I believe, it was either 12 or 13. We've established numbers aren't my thing. It was 12 or 13, and there were like 30 of them, right? The bubble was like 13, and there were 30 13s, and only, X number got in.
I guess the question is, can the top deck algorithm be balanced better to where it's like, when you're doing top 40 cuts, it locks like the top 16 to play against each other, or top 32 to play against each other because they're already locked. So at that point, they fight for the seeding because there's still an incentive at that point. Like you might take draw, but there may be an incentive to fight for the top 8 spots because then you get the bye.
Yeah.
Whereas let the players, I think in my ideal world is you have a situation where you can disincentivize draws by pushing people to play for top 8, but also push those win-in pods to where there's no one in there that's incentivized to draw. Or maybe there's one person, right? Because at least at one person, it doesn't become a team versus 1v1. Yeah. Because that's what I hate. Because right now it's 2v1v1 in those situations. And it's a terrible experience for the players.
Because those other two just hold on to their interaction.
Yeah.
Sit on their heuristic studies. No, you can't win.
I mean, I've been in games.
You can't win.
I mean, I've been in games, and I've done it before where like I look at the player and I'll be like, we're going to force draw here? And they're like, yeah. We just won't. It's a bad experience, but you're incentivized as a player to maximize your points.
Right.
So like, I feel bad doing it, but I'm also trying to play a tournament and win money.
Right.
So like, I'm gonna do what I have to do, but I'd rather that play pattern just not exist.
Yeah.
Like correct the tournament rules to where I'm not incentivized to do something that I feel like is stupid.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
And it creates better gameplay if you're not trying to force draws,
Exactly.
right? Like, what's the point in forcing a draw in round 5? Honestly, like,
An extra point.
Minor seeding order, sure, but
well, sometimes it's also to lock. Like, I've definitely misassessed it before, where it's like 1 point gets me in, and if I don't get that 1 point, then I'm like 17th.
Well, yeah.
Or it's like I'm 11th in a top 10, and it's like.
Those are weird. Those depend on the amount of rounds.
No, I agree.
I've seen you in those, but we're getting sidetracked. The point is, the Royal Rumble meta was spicy. I am so happy to see a Malcolm Tana in top 4. So happy to see
At least a Pirate's there.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see a Malcolm Pilot doing something. Immediately, my friend and I started texting each other saying, should we brew Malcolm Tana? Like, let's...
Are you going to brew it? That's the real question.
So Preston already has a list together. It's spicy. They have Survival of the Fittest and Kinnan in it, which is a cook.
Survival's crazy, but I can see it.
It just gets Glenhorn, dude. All roads lead to Glenhorn. That is the takeaway from this podcast. All roads lead to Glenhorn. But yeah, I do kind of want to build it. Like
might as well, right?
Yeah,
Just
might as well.
If it sucks, don't play it anymore.
Green and red have had so many new tools added to the toolbox recently. I think there's some there. I don't know.
You're probably right. I can see it.
I could be right. I could be wrong. Go back to coping on Grixis. Green isn't my home. So
very fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and all that mumbo jumbo. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. We do have the TikTok up, and we do try to post daily there. Also, join our Discord. That's where we try to get audience questions. So if you want your question answered on air, we'll grab it from the comments, or you can kind of access us more directly through the Discord. We'll have that in the link below.
You got to do the below thing again.
I did get to do the below thing again. That was awesome. Till next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.